Marzia, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. We're back from London with our coverage of the American assassination of General Soleimani of the Quds Force and the PMF commander Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis and those accompanying them at Baghdad airport Friday. We've been looking at government reactions, popular reactions online and on the streets. What we're going to do first now, we've been monitoring the online reaction to the unfolding situation with our correspondent Ahmed Kamala, who joins me here in the studio. Ahmed, thanks for joining me. We can start perhaps by what happened this afternoon. The Iraqi Prime Minister is saying the Iraq's lawmakers will be voting on expelling American troops from Iraq. Fill us in on that.
Yeah, the vote that took place was almost unanimous. There were some Kurdish representatives and Sunni representatives that didn't attend and boycotted the vote, but those that did attend the vote unanimously declared to get the US troops out of Iraq. And some will argue that it's long overdue. So we've got an article here from the New York Times, of all places, and it says Iraqi lawmakers vote to expel US troops as Iran mourns slain general. So there's been a fierce online reaction where people have dissected what's been going on in the Iraqi parliament. I'm just going to go to one tweet from Jane Araf. She says, "This is stunning. Iraqi Prime Minister tells Parliament US troops should leave. Says real Donald Trump called him to ask him to mediate with Iran, then ordered drone strike on Soleimani. Says Soleimani carrying response to Saudi initiative to diffuse tension when he was hit." Now, if this is true, if what was said in the Iraqi parliament today was true, right, that Soleimani was there to diffuse tensions with Saudi Arabia, and that the Iraqi Prime Minister spoke to Donald Trump, who was asking him to mediate between Iraq and Iran, and then this happened, between Iran and the United States, and this happened, yeah, it shows two things. It shows the United States is treacherous to his allies, which was, until now, the Iraqi Prime Minister, and that it doesn't want any sort of peaceful coexistence or peaceful relations between Saudi Arabia and Islamic Republic of Iran. So this is very worrying signs, and I'm sure more will come out as this story unfolds. We've got another tweet from a Syrian girl, correct, who says, "Do you see the hundreds of thousands of Iraqi men attending Soleimani's funeral in Baghdad? They'll likely turn on US soldiers. The US won't be able to stay safe in Iraq. Pompeo lies about the assassination being popular will come back."
This is perhaps about that video that Pompeo published showing Iraqis, whoever they were, celebrating when they heard the deaths of these generals and the people accompanying them. You have been to Iraq, Ahmed, and recently. And tell us what you saw there. Probably you met members of the Popular Mobilization Force. Who are these people? Are they what the American described them as?
Yes, so I was in there in October. I actually flew into Baghdad International Airport, the scene of this horrific crime. And the first thing that I thought of is, imagine being in a civilian airport when an American drone strike does a military operation right next to it. It's unthinkable and reprehensible, illegal action. But in regards to the Popular Mobilization Forces, the thing that I noticed straight away when I went to Baghdad and when I went to Karbala and Najaf is how they're revered. These people are heroes. If you go to Karbala or Najaf, you'll see their pictures plastered on the lampposts. If you go to hospitals, you'll see the pictures of the Popular Mobilization Forces, the Hashd al-Shaabi, everywhere. The relatives of the Popular Mobilization Forces don't have to pay for hospital treatment in some hospitals. Their children don't have to pay school fees. These people are heroes. When they walk down the streets, they're mobbed by people wanting selfies. I took a selfie with them because these guys are just something else. They are the reason that Iraq today exists as a place of many religious sects.
Speaking of the religious and ethnic diversity of Iraq, perhaps we can talk about that briefly as well. The second in command of the PMF, al-Ibrahimi, known by his nom de guerre as Abu Muhandis, a Shia. But that is not the makeup of the PMF, is it?
No, it's not. They have a Yazidi faction, they have a Christian faction, because let's not forget, Daesh, this terrorist Takfiri group, threatened the whole of Iraq, threatened every single denomination and sect that did not prescribe to their very limited and narrow interpretation of Islam. So that's why the whole of Iraq, more than 1 million volunteers, listened to the call to join and volunteer to fight against Daesh and defeated Daesh. So these people are heroes, and this is something that we'll get into a bit later. Now, if the United States is truly fighting a war on terror, they should see Qasem Soleimani and the PMF as their allies in the fight against the Takfiri forces, because there's no one more responsible to defeating Daesh in the whole world than Iran, Syria, Hezbollah and the PMF units.
Fighting the real terrorists.
Fighting the real terrorists.
All right, Ahmed, thank you. How about we move on now, staying on the same topic. The American Vice President, Mike Pence, linking General Soleimani, now Lieutenant General Soleimani, to the September 11th attacks. But does the public record back him?
It doesn't. It doesn't. So again, we've taken this from the New York Times because it's important to show some elements of the American media are not even going along with this crazed act of aggression by the United States and Donald Trump. Now I'm going to read out the Mike Pence tweet. It's laughable how ridiculous it is. Mike Pence says, assisted in the clandestine travel to Afghanistan of 10 of the 12 terrorists who carried out the September 11th terrorist attacks in the United States. Now, what's worrying about this is the Vice President of the United States doesn't know that it was 19 hijackers in 9/11, not 12, firstly. Secondly, he doesn't know the very basics in regards to Middle East politics. If he did, he'd know the Taliban, Al-Qaeda and these affiliated groups hate the Islamic Republic of Iran, hate Shia Islam, hate Shia Muslims, and would never cooperate with Islamic Republic of Iran on anything, let alone terrorism. Thirdly, there was a vigil held in Tehran to commemorate the victims of 9/11, something that is completely missed in this analysis. And fourthly, the 9/11 Commission, Truth Commission report, which has many inconsistencies, but one thing that it did say was Hezbollah and Iran had nothing to do with 9/11. So it was even going against public record and public documentation with this crazy series of tweets, and there's more that I'll read out later. But before that, I'm going to get some reactions to Mike Pence's tweet. So Peter says, Pence falsely links Soleimani to 9/11. Here's what the 9/11 Commission concluded regarding to Iran. We have found no evidence that Iran or Hezbollah was aware of the planning of what later became the 9/11 attack. It's there. Right. We've got another tweet that was part of this crazy thread in the middle of the night from the Vice President. It says, Soleimani was plotting imminent attacks on American diplomats and military personnel. The world is a safer place because Soleimani is gone. And this is what's happening from American officials across the board. They're saying these things without any evidence to justify the unjustifiable. Because if they were to say, we took out this guy that was taking out Daesh, it doesn't look good to the American public. So he has to come with these statements that cannot be verified, that doesn't have one shred of evidence. And the last part of that tweet, the world is demonstrably a worse and more dangerous place after the death. The Iranians have vowed revenge. Hassan Nasrallah has vowed revenge, which we'll touch on later in the later stories.
More dangerous place than just a few days ago. The question is, like, what are they banking on? On the world's collective amnesia? Like, you know, you easily, and I think a lot of people can do the same thing, just only a click away you can find out if this is true, or who was on those planes that crashed into the World Trade Center in the United States. Yeah. Do they not know that they're going to get found out?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, 19 hijackers, 15 were from Saudi Arabia. There's been evidence presented from the victims of the families that Saudi Arabia had some role that's been ignored by the US State Department, ignored by Congress, and the internet is there. Now, I've got one more tweet that is really shocked me, and I've been following the politics in the region for a long time, but this one was just something else. This is from the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. It says, targeted 52 Iranian sites representing 52 American hostages taken by Iran many years ago. Some at the very high level and important Iran and Iranian culture, and those targets in Iran itself will be hit very fast and very hard. The US wants no more threats. Now,
Did he learn that from Daesh, like hitting religious and historical sites?
I mean, that's an important comparison you make, because if we think of who targets cultural sites and important historical sites, it is Daesh, Al-Qaeda in Timbuktu in Mali or in Palmyra in Syria. So Donald Trump is threatening the very actions that are used by the terrorists that he claims to oppose. It's stunning, and
a war crime in essence.
A war crime, a threat of a war crime.
A sitting American president promising to commit war crime
against cultural sites in your country, in countries of some of the colleagues here in the office. It's terrifying, and this type of language will not go down well, I don't even think, with the American public. So we'll wait and see.
We sure will. Shall we move on now?
Yes. So I've picked another American source, the CNN, because I'm trying to make the point that even some elements in American media are starting to see this for what it is.
Correct.
And from CNN it says, it's important to remember the role Soleimani played in the fight against ISIS. So even CNN can recognize this, but Donald J. Trump, Mike Pence, Pompeo seem to not recognize the role that Soleimani played. So I'm going to go to a tweet from What Read. It says, at Max Blumenthal told hundreds of anti-war activists outside the White House today why Qasem Soleimani was killed. He rolled back the Salafi jihad forces the CIA had been backing in Syria to destabilize another independent state, and he helped to prevent Iraq from becoming a US client state. So there's a video which we're going to play from Max Blumenthal, who was with me in Venezuela, and he's going to give some of his analysis of why this has happened.
Let me explain to you why Qasem Soleimani was killed. It's very simple. Because he rolled back the Salafi jihadi forces that the US, the CIA, had been backing in Syria to destabilize another independent sovereign country, and he helped prevent, by organizing the popular mobilization units, Hashd al-Shabi, he helped prevent Iraq from becoming a US client state. It is that simple, and the assassination of Qasem Soleimani is revenge for his success in rolling back the most vicious imperial plot that we have seen in recent years, which sought to have black flags, the black flags of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, the organization responsible for the 9/11 attacks, flying over Middle Eastern cities.
And shocking revelation there by that individual. Is there anything you want to add?
Yes, I do. So there's something that needs to be stated here, and something that's controversial, and that is the collusion between the United States and some would argue the United Kingdom and other Western allies and these Takfiri terrorist groups. Now, it started back in Afghanistan when they funded the Mujahideen, which then became the Taliban, which then had its role in 9/11. But even more recently in Syria and in Libya, with the principal objective of removing Gaddafi in Libya and Bashar al-Assad in Syria, they backed the most reactionary Takfiri forces throughout the region and spread chaos and misery. And this is a guy that stopped their objectives. Syria is still standing as a sovereign and free nation because of this brave martyr that we see in the picture to our right. And that is the reason some will argue that he was taken out. It was nothing to do with what happened at the US Embassy. It was nothing to do with allegations of US troops being killed. And even regarding those two allegations, what happened at the embassy was in response to what I mentioned earlier. The popular mobilization forces are popular amongst the Iraqi people. So when they were killed by a US airstrike, it was the Iraqi people that went to the embassy and voiced their anger and frustration. And to strip the Iraqi people of their agency, of their right to protest, and to say it was Iran orchestrating it all, is to deny them of their humanity.
Contrary to what the Americans have been saying.
And it denies them of their humanity. Iraqis are humans just like me and you. They have respect for their heroes, and they do not want to see these acts happen on their land. So I've got another tweet.
Go ahead.
That I'm going to go to from Ben Rose. Ben says, this all started when Trump pulled out of the Iran deal. It should never have come to this, and absolutely didn't have to. He created this crisis. I'm just going to say this. This maximum pressure policy has to be declared as the worst policy decision the United States has ever embarked on. It has not worked. If he thought that the North Korean approach would work on Iran, it hasn't. It's failed. And now he needs to reassess his options, because this path is leading to a very dangerous place, not only for the United States, but for its allies in the region. And it's best for the United States and the future of its role in the region to reassess and rethink its options.
It sure will have to do that. Let's talk about what the Secretary General of Hezbollah, an ally of Iran, said in the past few hours, Hassan Nasrallah. What he said, among many other things, was that the U.S. is going to pay the price for the killing of General Soleimani, repeating the same line that we have been hearing coming out of Iran. How is the U.S. going to pay the price from your point of view? Because this is the $64 million question. And what form will the Iranian retaliation or revenge take as we move forward?
See, that is the $64 million question, because we know it's coming, but how and when is the question that many don't know the answers to as of yet. But there will be a response. And Hassan Nasrallah has said there's not a military base that is safe. And we believe him. This man and Hezbollah were responsible of defeating the Israelis on the battlefield. They've defeated Daesh on the battlefield. They're the most seasoned fighting group in the whole of the Middle East. They know what they're doing. These are not some bandits in the desert like al-Nusra and Daesh and all that. These are a well-armed, well-financed, organized, disciplined force. And what Hassan Nasrallah has said is, let's think back to the 1980s. It was those same forces that kicked the US out of the region the last time. So history has a funny way of repeating itself.
Can we look at some of the tweets as well as far as
Yes, so Jane Ferguson says, funeral prayers for Qasem Soleimani held in Hezbollah stronghold in Beirut. Death to America screamed again and again. I've been living in Beirut for 6 years and never seen so much anger. I want to just touch on this, because this is, they cut on Sky News the death to America in the Iranian parliament today, and they cut it in a way to demonize the Iranian public. To say, look at these fanatics, they're screaming death to America.
Yes.
They cannot be trusted, they cannot be negotiated. Death to America is a political slogan. It doesn't mean death to Americans. It means death to the exploitative system that exploits the people of the world and goes to war every couple of years for resources and to sanctions countries like Venezuela, countries like Cuba, Nicaragua, Iran, Sudan, the list goes on. It's death to that exploitative system of the United States that sees the whole world as its playground with little pockets of resources that it can go into as if it's some sort of safety deposit bank.
And bullies other countries into abiding by those sanctions.
Exactly. So when they say death to America, they mean death to the system of the United States of America, which exploits everywhere and constantly goes with this aggressive posturing against the smaller nations. So I think it's an important clarification.
Yes, take us to Twitterverse and see what